Hello, Pastor Joel here from Chico First Assembly, and I want to talk to you this morning about Psalm 142. Psalm 142 revisits a theme from some of the earlier Psalms. It's where David is fleeing from his enemies and hiding in caves. The Psalm falls in a category of Psalms known as the complaint Psalms. It's important to remember that complaint in the Psalms isn't a form of whining or griping. Complaint is giving voice to our circumstances and trustfully transferring them into God's hands. Another psalm where David mentions hiding in a cave is Psalm 57. But there's a major change of tone between Psalm 57 and this one, Psalm 142. In Psalm 57, David is animated by enthusiastic praise, even though he's in a cave and surrounded by enemies seeking his life. He describes his enemies as lions and ravenous beasts, and they have spread a net and dug a pit to capture him. Yet David is singing and making music. It's in Psalm 57 that we find some of the most memorable lines of praise in the Psalms. He says, "Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth." In Psalm 57, David was able to enter that wonderful place that's called history as narrative past. And this is that place where you can sing and rejoice in a victory as if it has already happened, even though you're in the middle of a great trial or pain in your life. And this is what we need to do in our trials and pains in life. Psalm 142 is different from Psalm 57. David pours out his complaint before the Lord. His spirit has grown faint. He looks in every direction and only sees his enemies. He even says, "I have no refuge. No one cares for my life." David then cries out to God to rescue him. "Listen to my cry," he says, "for I am in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are strong, too strong for me." He goes on to compare his cave to a prison, saying, "Set me free from my prison, that I might praise your name." And so in both Psalms, enemies surround David. In both Psalms, he cries out to God for mercy. In both Psalms, he cries out to God to be his refuge. In other words, the situations are very, very similar. The difference is that in one case, David is more aware of God's presence and more confident in God's promises. In the other, Psalm 142, David feels more vulnerable and alone. Yet in both cases, God hasn't changed. In both cases, David must trust in the Lord. The source of David's deliverances hasn't changed. All of us encounter difficult periods in our lives. We find ourselves afraid and struggling. And the reasons may be very different for those things. But we can all relate to David's words when he cries out for God to set him free from his prison. Many things imprison us. But the truth of God's word remains unchanged, whether we feel it or not. Sometimes we can enter that amazing space of sensing and almost tasting the victory that's ours before it even begins to unfold in our lives. At other times, we experience what it feels like the absence of God and the silence of heaven. Still, in both cases, the Lord is still our refuge and our strength. His promises are still true. And so we still cry out to him, knowing that in the end, God will uphold the faith of his servants. And so that's my challenge to you today, is to cry out to God and to trust him, remembering what he has done for you in the past. God bless you, and we're praying for you.